normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
We have this from Zero Hedge. I don't think we'll ever get to the 2024 election. Colonel Douglas McGregor, retired, warns. And this is the gist of it. So let's see. I think that's
Does
that's
he
it.
usually make bombastic claims
he's
like
on
this?
He's on the PBD podcast.
No. This is not. He is not like. He's not the type of guy to just say wild things to get a reaction. This is a serious guy. This was like a highly decorated colonel in the military. He was McMaster's boss at one point in the military, and then just like he kind of turned against all of the wars. I believe he drew up the plans for battle with Russia if we were to ever go to war with them.
Let me read this.
Guy.
They first in the Zero Hedge article break down who he is. They say, Bet David laid out how he thinks 2024 will play out. He says, Newsom will go around defending Biden, selling Biden's record, have him constantly attack DeSantis. If Biden doesn't step down, have mainstream media attack him. Once Jill notices the endless attacks, have a private meeting with Biden, sharing strategy to save face. Multiple documentaries showing him as a modern day FDR, massive Simon & Schuster book deal, defend his legacy. Step 5, choose one of the few options to step down due to health. Jill and I prayed about it. We fixed everything Trump broke. We're out. Step 6 is in order to prevent Kamala from backstabbing, let her become the first female president for a split second, then step down. Divide DeSantis and Trump. Newsom becomes 47 to step 8, yada, yada. In response to this, McGregor went dark, beginning by noting that, first of all, I think it's brilliant. And I think that if we're living in a linear world, in other words, when one event follows the next logically, you're absolutely right. But I don't think we'll ever get to the 2024 election. I think things are going to implode in Washington before then. From there, it gets more ominous. Now, I don't know that I disagree. And one of the reasons is, which we'll get into it a little bit later, is TikTok pushing the Osama bin Laden letter to America and having a bunch of Gen Z leftists claim that Osama was correct. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm just saying the political divide in this country is so psychotic right now to the point where, like we already mentioned, if you're being criminally charged in a liberal district, your best bet is to say Trump made you do it. No matter what it is. Shoplifting. I was watching this video about Donald Trump and he told me to do it. Please help. I'm a victim of the guy you hate.
Listen, dude, I'll say still to this day, and you, Tim, you've done some incredible things in your career. But if I had to pick still to this day, what I'd say I think your greatest moment was still Jack Dorsey Rogan with the Rogan, because it was just such an incredible thing. Everything lined up where, like, first, if you remember, that Jack Dorsey went on Rogan and they didn't have a very confrontational argument. And it's literally to this day the only Joe Rogan Experience episode where I ever saw like Joe's audience really upset with him. And as great, and this is a credit to Joe, who, you know, full disclosure, is a friend of mine, but a credit to him is he was like, okay, I hear you. Let's like run that back with someone who's critical of them. But you had the point to them, and people could accuse you of being hyperbolic. People could accuse me of kind of the same thing. But you had that moment to them where you were like, and I don't remember your exact words, but you were like, you guys don't realize what you're playing with here. Like, you don't realize the game you're playing. And you're like, I'm getting a van and like going to be bringing, and like, I'm like really concerned about like you provoking a civil war in this country. And okay, it's not like we've had a civil war exactly since then, but look, we know we're all flirting with it. And this is a real thing that when people make these kind of dire warnings, I understand it's easy to go, oh, that's kind of crazy. But look around at this country, man. We are flirting with a lot of very insane possibilities.
Time travel test. Go back to, what was it? Was it 2018 or 2019? When I was on with Jack Dorsey, Vijay, and Rogan. It might have been 2019.
It was 2018 or
2018.
It was 19.
It might have
was
been.
it 19?
Yeah.
Go back to that year and tell people, if I went back and everything I said was vague, predictive, like this country is headed towards civil war. I'm getting a van. I'm building a van with solar power, getting ready to bug the F out. And they're laughing like, haha, yeah, right. Now go back and say, since then, for the first time ever, a sitting president has been indicted in multiple jurisdictions. January 6th, just January 6th alone. I had Ryan Long came here on the show.
Love Ryan Long.
He's fantastic.
I was just thinking about it yesterday.
One of the first things he says when the show goes live is he goes, Tim, you told me there was going to be a civil war. What happened? I thought you were getting me all hyped up. I was really worried when I left. And then I said, 1,000 Trump supporters stormed into the Capitol and disrupted the Electoral College vote count. And he went, oh.
Well, I mean, and even the riots of 2020. I mean, the fact that we had the longest sustained riots causing billions of dollars of property destruction that same year.
So this is,
or
this is the important thing to understand is, going back to something like that debate, what we're seeing with Twitter, we're seeing the hyperpolarization of Twitter, the rules they were creating, the narratives they were swinging, and the bifurcation in American culture. And that's the point I was making. Like, you guys keep doing this.
Yeah.
You are creating two distinct universes. And what I could see at the time and what I can see now is like a blur. It's like when if anybody wears glasses, you know exactly what I mean. Your glasses are off and you see a strange shape in front of you and you can't exactly define it, but you're like, there is a person walking towards me right now. You put your glasses on, you can see it clearly. If I had glasses, I could see the future. But I'm saying what we're witnessing right now, as Phil Labonte says, what's the off ramp? If we are now seeing in these January 6 cases, confess and say Donald Trump made you do it or you're done. We're seeing Enrique Tarrio getting 20 years. He wasn't even there. But more importantly, since that point, we've had the Summer of Love riots, the worst riots in 50 years, 30 plus deaths. We've had a guy gunned down in the street in Portland. We've had multiple autonomous zones. I can't even begin to stress how we've normalized this. Go back then and say, what if I said to Jack Dorsey and Vijay Gadde very specifically, within the next year or a year and a half, there will be far left extremists who occupy city centers with rifles and kill people who oppose them, they'd say, you're nuts.
Right.
And it happened. And now we're just like, oh, that happened. Are we not even shocked that's going on?
Yeah, so exactly. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that, like imagine, I don't know what the analogy exactly would be, but so imagine you go, you were in a business and you were talking to the other like stockholders and you go, I think this business is in real trouble. I think we're going to be out of business next year. And then next year, you're not out of business, but your stock is down 90%. And they went, see, you're wrong. We weren't out of business.
Fire, and we're doing great.
Like, okay, fine. So I'm not saying, technically speaking, maybe you weren't out of, maybe it wasn't a civil war. Maybe we weren't out of business, but still at least grant that there was like a lot accurate to this prediction.
But
and that's my point about, by the way, just tying this back to the not being elections. Maybe that's not exactly right. Maybe Colonel Douglas McGregor is not word for word right about this, but there still might be, much like with your prediction, like some real insight into
I'll give you
that.
one. I'll give you the potentiality. October 2024, a single state Secretary of State decides Donald Trump is ineligible based on the 14th Amendment as they've interpreted it. And so they remove his name from the ballots immediately. And we're 3 weeks out or whatever from the election. So early voting's happening. Immediately, you get the Trump team, all the conservatives, everyone filing emergency notices saying we need an injunction on this immediately. And then the state says, OK, we'll see you in court. They go to court. By December, there's a ruling. Yeah, guys, you can't keep Trump off the ballot. Oh, the election's over. Trump wasn't on the ballot. We've already seen in Michigan and Minnesota, they've said no to this. But the issue would be look, we saw this in Arizona. And so I'm not basing this off of nothing. In Arizona, the wrong ballots were printed on the wrong paper, so the machines didn't work. I guarantee you. I shouldn't say that because I can't actually guarantee you. But I would tell you this right now. I would bet a substantial amount of money that in 2024, we will see similar voting machine errors on par with a misprint that results in jurisdictions failing. Listen, if we hear about 100 jurisdictions and it totals maybe a single percentage point that this happened, no one will accept it no matter which side it ends up being. Left, if it happens to Trump, if it happens to anybody else, like Newsom, I don't think it's going to be Biden.
Well, the truth is that government is a faith-based system. And that's especially true for democracy. The whole thing is kind of reliant on this. It's all a religion in a way. Like it's all like you believe in it. We believe in, look, the government is a religion in every sense of the word, right? It has its kind of like sacraments and its rituals and its nobilities and its
sacred cows.
It's sacred cows. It has its blasphemy, the things you're not allowed to say, right? It has all of this. And also, much like religion, and I say this as someone who believes in God, so don't take this the wrong way, but it is, so picture this like the religion you don't believe in, not the religion you do believe in, okay? So if you're religious, every other religion, not your one. But also, it doesn't exist. Like government itself doesn't exist. It's an idea that's in your head.
And that idea is almost gone.
Well, right. But that's the point, is that if it's not in your head, then it's not, there isn't government. There's buildings and there's men with guns and who will enforce the politicians' wills. And there's titles that we made up senator, governor, president, but none of that is objective reality.
Right.
This is an idea that we all buy into. And so when you have something like 330 million people in a nation, and then 140 million voters or something like in that ballpark, and then we're all recording all of their votes one day. Yeah, now, obviously, it could be a much better system than we have here, but it requires to some degree a leap of faith for people to just say, I believe in this system. And nobody has that in the United States, or very few people
we're
have
losing
that
our
today.
religion.
I think it's fair to say that 2012 was the last election. I'm not saying 100% it is true. I'm saying it's fair to say in that 2016 was disputed by the left as fraudulent because Russia interfered. They even believe they flipped votes, et cetera, et cetera. 2020, the Trump supporters said the same thing of the Democrats. I don't care who you think is right or wrong. You're allowed to think you're right. You're allowed to think other people are wrong. The point is, we have now had 2 elections where both sides have accused each other of very dramatic, serious treason.
Yes, and the point is that it's almost like if you believe it, then you're right. Because the point I'm making about saying it's like a religion, and again, I really, just to be clear, I'm not trying to knock the idea of religion. I'm saying like some of the things that I think are the most beautiful ideas and institutions in the world. I think marriage is amongst the most beautiful institutions in the world. But in a marriage, if either the husband or the wife doesn't believe in it anymore, then they're right.
Right.
There is no objective thing. It's like if you don't believe it, then you're right. Then you're not in this anymore. It almost requires both of you to believe in this thing that it's real. Okay,
it's a much bigger debate, but I do disagree.
You can get into
none of that.
No. You can get into how you trap your wife in the basement after this. But I'm just saying. I'm saying my wife is free to leave anytime she wants to, and she doesn't want to leave.
It's not about one. She's Catholic, though, right? So. But you're not baptized, yeah. Well, it's a different situation. But my point is, but you don't believe in the concept of like sacramental marriage, or that you're like actually bound in a way where you can't leave.
I'm not saying that you're not. I'm saying you can believe that you're bound in that way, and I do believe that. Yes, I believe that I've made a commitment to my wife that I said in front of our families and in front of God, and that I will till death do us part. And yes, I believe that. But if I stop believing that, it doesn't exist anymore. That's my point. It requires the belief in that. Otherwise, it's over. And so in a sense, even though it is completely ridiculous for the left half of America to say that Vladimir Putin overthrew the government in 2016 when he installed Trump, them believing that in itself changes the whole dynamics of politics. And the same thing for Trump supporters who believe the election was stolen in 2020. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't or it was. I'm just saying once you believe that, we're not playing the same game anymore.
I agree with some of that.
But you're putting on the lens of what you think is right and wrong. I'm saying forget what you think is right or wrong. I'm saying if your wife stops believing that she is
going to act as if she's not married
to you. You're in a different game. You're in a different game now.
It's certainly a different situation.
And so that's what we're dealing with in America today.
Yeah, no, my point is simply to say that I agree with some of what you're saying, and I think ultimately we would just disagree on like the moral questions of how you're sort of formulating the analogy. The way I understand it is I believe obviously in the trueness of my faith. I also believe there are such things as false religions. I think anytime you have a false idol, you have a false religion, and government has become an idol for many people, especially people in government. They really do see themselves as the highest moral authority. Even Fauci saying something like, I am the science. I mean, that is a mockery of Christ. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Fauci is saying he is truth itself, and they also say that science is the way and the life. They have this insane kind of scientist system of thought built up where anyone who calls themselves an expert is now entitled to tell you exactly how to live your life. They have the fullness of the truth. So I totally agree that there are parallels here with false religions.
Rothbard actually talked about this in Anatomy of the State, that once faith in the state declines, they would replace it with a technocracy or scientism. It's exactly what we've seen. That they're basically evolving naturally. But I want to go back to a point from a minute ago when you were talking about sitting down with Jack Dorsey on Rogan. The whole reason that, first off, you didn't know at the time, but thanks to Elon Musk's acquisition and the Twitter leaks, we now know that much of those policies in the terms of service modification as well as the moderation policy shifts were being dictated by a multitude of three-letter agencies. Now let's back up a little bit further. The whole reason that they felt genuinely righteous in modifying these things, even if you discount the FBI interference and everything else, was because they felt genuinely that Donald Trump had the election stolen because of Russian interference. That was also the state that had planted those seeds. all fictitious. Hillary Clinton, the Steele dossier, all a lie. So you have this entire censorship apparatus that is being rolled out, and you have useful idiots that are actually propagating it based off of deception that is all a CIA plan from the get-go.
Now, let's just to add to what you said. They genuinely believe Trump stole the election. He's a Putin asset, so he must be stopped. But that narrative itself was created by them. And this is why I have long described Twitter as Jack Dorsey hooking his own sewer system into his own mouth. Dorsey created Twitter with a team, and everybody's sharing ideas. Crackpot psychotic refuse is splattered all over the place on Twitter, and Jack Dorsey decides, I'm going to take that funnel and shove it down my throat, and starts consuming it. He then adopts the ideology of chaos. Listen, this is the important thing. The TikTok story about Gen Z believing bin Laden was correct because they read his letter proves my point. There's no way they actually read his letter. If they did, it's all anti-LGBT. They didn't actually read it. They're simply saying they agree with it because they're seeing other people say it. Jack Dorsey saw the same trends, decided to abide by them without knowing what he was talking about, and that's what the left is. And he built rules around it, which helped propagate the very cult.
All right, before we get into the Osama bin Laden letter, if I just one thing on that, like, and I don't completely disagree with you, but there is kind of like another element into this, which is that, look, if you look at the state of social media from pre-2016, it was just a different world. And I'm not saying that nobody ever got like banned or kicked off. There were very rare instances where people would go really, really far, like where people would actually be like advocating like, you know, Nazism and stuff like that, where they would get banned. But it was very rare. I mean, I remember back in the days of the wild, wild west, and I say that in the best possible sense of the term as a libertarian. Love the wild, wild west.
Me too.
But that it was you could kind of say whatever you wanted to without any fear that like, oh, I better watch myself, or I bet I'm gonna. And of course, it was because all of the incentives lined up for social media companies to not want to kick people off
because there was real competition still.
Well, no, look, the whole thing is they want you to be on their site.
Exactly.
They don't want to kick you off.
Now they don't care.
But let me give you the quick finish your thought so I can.
Well, but my point is that the rise of Donald Trump, who really tweeted his way to the presidency and tweeted his way to the presidency when the entire establishment said this guy is not allowed to win, and ended up winning, and used Twitter to drive the entire news cycle through the entire election. Once he won, the all of the powerful people in government and the media class, they couldn't simply accept that, oh, he had a message that resonated with the people, even though we told you there was no way this message would resonate with the people. And we couldn't accept that Hillary Clinton turns out to just be a horrifically corrupt, unlikable, awful human being. But I'm just saying this actually happened, that they hauled all of the heads of the big social media, the big tech companies in front of Congress, and explicitly in front of everybody threatened them with violence. You know, they threatened them with, we will regulate your the reason Trump won is because of disinformation and Russian interference, and you better do something about that or else.
Many of them threatened nationalization.
That was a factor in what happened.
Let me give you the quick rundown of what social media started as. Social media website. Post what you want to post. People did. Eventually, too many people are posting. Facebook says their feeds are cluttered up. Reverse chronological isn't working. We need them to stay on the website. Algorithms were created. Algorithms will deliver to you content we think you like better. Many of them failed. The early algorithms of YouTube were, if it gets more clicks, show it more. What happened? Every thumbnail became women in bikinis. I'm dead serious.
Right.
What ends up happening then is a bunch of companies start emerging. Huffington Post, one of the first. All of a sudden, they're getting massive traffic. Everyone's clicking their articles. They can read the news now, not through a newspaper, and comment on these stories. What ends up happening? Through the algorithms, Facebook says, share the links that get the most clicks. What happens then? What gets the most clicks? Police brutality videos. Things that make people angry get the most clicks. Overnight, in the early 2010s, we end up seeing, my favorite example is Mike.com. Do you guys know that started as a Ron Paul website?
Yeah, you told me about it.
Mike.com started as libertarian, pro-Ron Paul, and with a component of anti-police brutality because libertarians were very into this. Eventually, however, Mike becomes social justice. Why? It was getting more clicks to go beyond police brutality. This whole machine's always been in play. So we can say pre-2016 it was a different story. No. You were walking into the building. You just didn't see the bowels.
Well, no, I'm not.
Deep beneath.
So I don't deny that, and I think there is part of this that just was an organic force of like, how can we get more clicks and more clicks and more clicks? But I am saying that like there was a government intervention. And obviously we know from all of like the Twitter files and all of that stuff now that there was massive like government intervention that certainly put their thumb on this scale and said, and particularly, I'm not just saying about the clickbait stuff. I'm more talking about like the tech censorship stuff where they really did crack down on these companies and insist that you like censor dissenting voices. And oftentimes, well, let me just say, and oftentimes it was dissenting voices who were getting tons of clicks.
And what you need to understand is the people working for the intel agencies are not like it's a 30-year-old guy in 2005 who is now a 40-year-old guy in 2015 who went, whoa, we better censor this. It is in 2015 them hiring a new 30-year-old who's been indoctrinated for 10 years by the refuse machine. A 10-year-old, a kid born in 2000 gets on the internet, gets on Facebook for the first time in 2010. And what does he see on Facebook? Literally nothing but police brutality videos. The police brutality was so ubiquitous on Facebook that there was a website dedicated to nothing but police brutality videos in the top 500 global websites, making millions of dollars. You're 10 years old, you get on Facebook and it's all you see.
Yeah.
For the next 4 or 5 years, in your formative years, the only thing you see, guess what? They're BLM activists now. Now you have critical race theorists and Marxists. Now imagine this. Imagine you're already 10 years old in 2000 and you're just starting to get on the internet. By the time you're 15, you're being inundated with this stuff. 10 years later, you're 25. You're now working in these intel agencies. You're out of college. You're interning. This is what we saw with Bud Light. I predicted this. I said, I'm willing to bet it's going to turn out. I was talking to Vivek about this. It's a young millennial marketing person who is just brought on and is risen in the ranks and is now trying to push their crackpot garbage into the machine. What did it turn out to be? Exactly that. A millennial woman who said, let's do wokeness, and then burn the company to the ground.
Because we don't want these frat boy customers that buy, millions of cans of our beer every year.
Why are we seeing 16-year-olds in San Francisco marching through the hallways chanting from the river to the sea? Do you genuinely think these kids know anything about Israel-Palestine?
No, they've been indoctrinated by their schools.
Let's go to it, baby.
Well, it's not just their schools.
Hold on, we got it.
Let's jump point about that. After we jump to the next story.
Well,
but I got a point about the point about...
We can make another point. Well, I just want to say, you mentioned they're brainwashed by their schools. That's certainly true in part. I had the privilege of speaking to Dr. George Barna on my podcast, and he's done research on what tends to form the beliefs of the youth in America. And what he found is that, like, without a close second, media is basically what shapes their opinions. When you look at schools, you look at parents, you look at churches. It's far, far above all of those things. Is media what they're consuming on television, basically, on social media.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.